we have case studies where they've actually pulled the soul out of the body and held it with them as they're both looking down at the victim. This is Judy Doherty. She was an experiencer the Collins Elite was working with. And they were talking to her, and she said, she goes, I was just driving down the road one day. She said, I look up, and there is this silver metallic object hovering over my car. She says, I look up at this disc. She said, get out. She goes, and it was at that point that I blacked out. And she says, now I'm not looking up at the UFO, the UAP. She said, now I'm inside of it, looking down at my own body. Now, I believe that it's not just the soul that they're after. I think that in order to get to the body, they have to pluck the soul. In other words, it's not just that I'm extracting you from you. I want you. I want to inhabit your body as my own. I was working with a researcher out of New England, and he did a lot of cleansings. He was talking to me about soul hunters and the molters. And he said, you're the only person I've heard talk about this the way you have. And he said, but I got to tell you a story. I said, okay. He says, when I was really young, he said, I would have these fits of sickness. He said, I would go in to the ER, they'd give me medication, I'd go home and deal with it. He said, so I was chronically ill. He said, but one night, he said, I'm sitting there, and he said, I had the chills and everything. I said, I look in the corner of my room. He said this. He said, I looked in the corner of my room, and he said, there was this entity just staring at me. He made no noises. He was just staring at me. He said, that's when I just started feeling myself being peeled out of my body. He said it was a tearing effect. And he said, now, I'm hovering over my body. He said, now I'm looking at it. And he said, Nathaniel, he said, the only way I can explain it was I'm looking down at my body. He said, all of a sudden, something crawled into it. And it was that being that was in the corner. He said, when he crawled into my body began to be animated without me being present in it. He said, that was when the entity began to speak a whispering, buzzing language. And then he looked up. And so now you have this kid staring into his own eyes, and something else was inside of him.
Kind of gives me chills, man.
Right, it's terrifying. But again, in my field, there's a lot of people, okay, well, are they threats to us? Well, maybe a little bit. I think the reason a lot of people don't want to accept that fact is because it puts us as a species in a very compromising position.